Hi there, and welcome back to the Airplane Spoon podcast, real questions and real stories about feeding children. I'm Sarina Murrell, feeding therapist and director of the Airplane Spoon. Today, we're talking about one of the most common things I hear from parents, and honestly, one of the most exhausting parts of meal times for many families. Today's question is, how do I get my child to actually sit at the table for meals? Maybe your child is up and down every 30 seconds. Maybe they can't make it through a meal without wandering off. Maybe just getting them to the table in the first place feels like this whole event, and then they're gone in 10 seconds flat. If any of this sounds familiar, you're in the right place. And I want you to know this. This is one of the most common things families bring to me. You are not alone. Today, I'm going to walk you through some of the most important reasons why children struggle to sit at the table. And I'm going to give you some practical, concrete things to look at and try. Before we dive into the why behind the struggles, I want to take a moment and talk about the why sitting at the table matters. Because understanding this can really help you shift your perspective when we're feeling frustrated. One thing to think about first is that eating is a sedentary act. We are meant to be stopped to eat. Biologically, it means that our environment is safe, that we can stop and take that moment to eat and to digest. And that can be a real mismatch for kids, especially little ones who are on the move all the time. But something really fascinating that I love to share with families when I learned it is that digestion actually begins before your child takes a bite. Just by looking at food, visualizing it, smelling it, the body starts to prepare itself to eat. Saliva increases in the mouth, and part of that saliva has some digestive enzymes to help break down the food better. The stomach and the muscles in the gut begin to relax, and it's the body's signal that it's time to rest and digest. And that word rest is key. Digestion happens in what's called the parasympathetic state. It's a calm, relaxed state. It does not happen when we're stressed, distracted, or in constant motion. When kids are eating on the go, walking around, doing a little bit of like a flyby bite, we're chasing them, they're watching a screen, they're playing, they're often absorbing less nutrition from that same food, and many children also struggle with constipation. And eating posture and mealtime habits actually can play a bigger role in this than most people realize. So, digestion and nutrition aside, sitting at the table also helps children to tune in to their own hunger and fullness cues. It supports that family connection and bonding over a shared mealtime. And it helps children learn some of those mealtime rhythms and expectations over time and in different settings, if that's at home or at daycare or school, or if you're at a party or somebody else's home. And the number one thing on terms of the safety standard is it reduces choking risk. So when we work on helping our kids to stay at the table, we're not just working on manners, we're actually supporting their digestion, their nutrition, their social engagement, and their relationship with food. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the real reasons kids struggle to sit at the table. And I want to start here because it's something families often overlook. Before we assume it's any sort of behavior problem, that they're just being naughty or that they're not listening or that they're trying to just do whatever they want, let's check if the setting of the table is actually physically comfortable and appropriate for your child. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a home and the first thing I notice watching a child eat is that their feet are dangling in the air, and their chin might be practically at the table height. They're trying to reach up to get their food. That's exhausting for anybody. And for a child, that physical discomfort might come out as wiggles or trying to get down or refuse to eat. If they can't actually sit comfortably, it's going to be hard to engage with food. One thing that's very, very important is a footrest for a child. So, if you were to go to a restaurant and they had big, tall stools, there's always a bar at the bottom of the stools for our feet to sit on. Because if you try to lift your feet up right now, your first thing you're going to do is you're going to feel all this engagement in your stomach, in your core, to try to stabilize you. And so, if our body is working on stabilizing our posture just for sitting up and not falling over, it's going to have a real hard time to try to focus on eating because I'm already doing a lot of work. But the moment our feet can touch, our toes can touch, now I have stable, whoop, I can come right up and focus on my mouth. So any sort of foot surface that feet can touch and they're not dangling is really going to help with a child's comfort in their chair. This could be anything that you can put under their feet. It could be the footrest, but make sure it can fit. It's the right height. And you might need to move it if it's a high chair or a chair that can move. And if not, could you put some sort of a box or a book, even a pillow? It's okay if it's soft on top of it. It's still going to have some pressure there. Sometimes when it's a high chair and more of a baby or an infant, I'll just have the parent sit right in front so the baby can put their feet on the parent's knees. And so their feet aren't dangling, they're touching right there. Another thing about the position of the chair itself is the height. At what level is the body coming to the table? So if the chair is really, really high, then it's going to be like really far away to bring the food to the mouth. And if the chair is very, very low, then it's going to be really hard to kind of reach your arms up to get it. And my face is very close, and maybe I don't want to be that close to the level of the food. So I always tell families that if you just scoot that chair in all the way to the touching the body, the table should come between the belly button and the nipples. So right in between this zone is a good zone that we have use of our arms. The food is not too close and not too far away. And that's going to help make sure that the height of the chair is relevant to the size of the child. And a 2-year-old and a 10-year-old are going to need different size chairs. A lot of times families say they don't like their high chair. They grew out of that. They're done with that. But they're a little person and they're using a big person's chair. And so they're going to adjust to use that chair in a way that works for them. A lot of times I see kids going up on their knees on a big dining room chair, like the adult sized dining room table chair. They're going to go up on their knees so that they can actually get up to the table. Because if they were to sit on their bottoms, the table will be way too high and their feet are floating. So if they're on their knees, they have more stabilization. Their feet aren't floating, but they might actually be too far away and they're still going to be super wiggly. So, and imagine if you were eating on your knees all the time. Can we just think about this through the perspective of our child? If they don't want the chair, it's not necessarily that they don't want it. It might be that the chair isn't a good fit for them. How can we adjust the chair to help? Because they're not adult size yet. And it'd be kind of silly if we were eating in a chair that was meant for, a 12-foot person that was double our size. If your child is 3 feet tall and this is a chair that's meant for a 5 or 6 foot tall person, it's double their size. The chair is too big. So we need to adjust their seating to fit them. Okay, and the other thing is, how comfortable is this chair, or what does it look like? If you were to sit or just put yourself kind of right where that child's chair is, what does it look like? Is there a bunch of light coming in from a window that's in their face and so they don't want to be there? Or is the chair really hard and it kind of hurts their bottom to be sitting on that? Uh, is there like a fan or some sort of a speaker that's right by their head? Is there something that is in the physical environment that actually might not work well with where that chair is? And how could we adjust that chair? Like close the curtain or move the chair to a different angle at the table. A lot of times I recommend that children are facing a wall instead of facing an open room because they can focus a little bit more, that they're going to have less distractions, especially if there's a lot of foot traffic, like people coming in and out or other people walking by, and you can see the whole big room of that. Now, they might want to turn around and be looking over their shoulder all the time, so we can try to reduce all of this foot traffic by eating together during meals, but just having a wall that they're looking at is more supportive for their attention of we're doing mealtime right now. Okay. And so those are some sensory factors to think about. Another sensory factor could just be um, the messiness on their hands or access to utensils. Some children love to get really messy and they're going to put their hands in it and they don't want to use spoons or forks at all. And so that's fine. But for some children, they really don't like to get messy on their hands. There's some sort of a sensory difference or just discomfort around that. So, having access not only to utensils to use a spoon or fork, but also to a towel so that they can wipe their hands if they do get messy, so that they don't have to get up and run away or overwhelm if they have some sort of a sensory experience because they're uncomfortable with that. But now they have a tool to help them in that moment by just drying their hands on a towel. I do recommend a dry towel over a wet towel or a wet wipe because the dry is going to be very clear. If my hand is wet because I touched an apple and then I dry it off, it's dry again. But if my hand is wet because I touched an apple and then I use a wet washcloth or a wet wipe, it's still wet. And sometimes that wetness can cause some discomfort. So dry can be better in those moments. Another really common reason, especially for kids who are sensory seekers or have been sitting all day at school, especially if they're school age and they have them in desks all day, is that their body might need to move before it can settle, especially at the end of the day for dinner time. And they're really excited about coming home and they want to run around and play. Think about it. They've just been sitting. So they're done sitting. Their nervous system is craving movement. Sitting down for another 20 to 30 minutes feels impossible. Maybe you had a long car ride home and it's from the car ride. It's like, okay, let's come sit at the table. We could just have a little bit of intentional movement before meals. That could be like jumping on a trampoline. That could be doing some like animal walks, like bear walks or crab walks, doing some wall push ups or on a swing, or even just some jumping jacks. These kind of heavy work activities help the body to regulate and make it easier to settle at the table, not harder. You think, I don't want to get them all riled up and jump, jump, jump. They're going to come to the table. But if there's a clear transition and they understand that it's time for dinner, letting that energy out is going to help them to settle better. And you can also have some supports at their chair, like a little bit of like a cushion to sit on if the base is too hard and they just want to wiggle a little bit. There's like different kind of just soft pillow cushions or maybe more of like a bumpy rubber wobble cushion to sit on. You could have like a stretchy resistance band under their feet so they can kick against it and their legs are kind of jumping, but they're not moving their whole body or trying to get up and run around. Maybe they could just have a little fidget in their hand as well to help get out some movement or some physical energy while they have to sit. And they're not rewards, it's more about supports to help them stay regulated to be able to eat. Okay, so this next one, it's not about the chair or the environment itself, but it's about the act of mealtime. It's the food. Some kids leave the table because when they see their food, nothing feels safe to eat. It might be very unpredictable. They've never seen it before, or they know they don't like that food and they don't want it, so they escape. Now, this doesn't mean that you should only serve foods that your child likes and nothing else, because that definitely is going to lead to more narrower and narrower food restrictions, and that's not the goal. But I do recommend that there's always at least one accepted food on the plate at every meal, something that your child knows and that they enjoy. And it could be as simple as like plain pasta or sliced fruit or crackers on the side so that they can go to that and they know that I eat that. And once eating that, they might be ready and explore and eat the other foods as well. Having one safe food on the plate gives your child an anchor. It reduces that anxiety of sitting down to something that feels uncomfortable or unfamiliar. And now they're like, okay, I can eat this, I can sit here, and they can explore other foods around them. All right, two more things I want to touch on: transitions and hunger, because both of these can have a huge impact on whether your child arrives at the table ready to engage or already falling apart. Transitions first. For many children, especially for neurodivergent children, moving from one activity to another is genuinely hard. If your child is deep in play and suddenly it's time for dinner, that transition can feel like abrupt or jarring. And a child who's already emotionally dysregulated before they go to sit down at the table is going to have a much harder time at the table. So, what can we do to help with transitions? There could be some sort of timer or reminders, whether that's a verbal reminder, 5 more minutes and then dinner time, or I don't even use numbers sometimes. Sometimes just hearing those numbers can be very anxiety provoking for some children. It's almost time for dinner. We're going to clean up soon. And you don't always have to clean up. This is something I say to parents a lot too. As long as it's not in their visual field when they're at dinner, at the table. It could be a different room or it could be kind of behind them if they're at the table. But if they're doing a big play like a puzzle or a Legos or a train or some toy activity, maybe they don't have to clean it up to go to dinner. Maybe they can just leave it. And then they come to dinner so they know they can go back to it after. Sometimes this can be a help because they don't want to stop doing that. So we're trying to teach them that it's not a stop, it's a pause, and you can come back to it. Um, Sometimes we can use like a visual timer, or I like to do music. Like when the song stops, we're going to go to the table for dinner. We're going to go wash our hands to get ready for our meal. Um, and so having a consistent routine so that the transition becomes very predictable of having this is the song. It could be the same song or it could be just any song of like, we got two more songs and then it's time for us to get ready for our food. One more song. And then after this song, we're going to stand up and go wash our hands. And so then they just get to know that that's what that means. It's not you telling them we have to stop, we have to go. It's the song. The song ended. Same kind of thing with the timers and everything, but they can be really anxiety provoking because then you have this like beep, 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 or whatever it is. And that can be like, oh, time is a little bit tricky for all of us, especially if we were doing something that we really like. We don't want to stop doing that. The other thing about meal times is hunger. Most toddlers and preschoolers need to eat every 2 to 3 hours. So those are like children between 1.5 and 4 or 5 years old. And most school age children between 5 and 12, 13 years old need to eat every 3 to 4 hours. So if your child just had a snack like 45 minutes ago, they may genuinely not be hungry. And sitting down at the table with food in front of them that they're not really interested in eating is going to feel kind of pointless to them because they're not hungry. A natural driver to participate is hunger. But on the flip side, if your child is coming to the table absolutely ravenous, so hungry that their low blood sugar is actually causing dysregulation, emotional overwhelm, and all these classic hangry meltdowns, sometimes we might need a small snack to bridge them to get to that meal in a calm state. And that can be something that's not going to um, be too filling or last too long, like maybe some fruit or a couple of pieces of cracker or nuts or cheese or whatever your child more readily accepted, but very small to get them to be ready for meal. And for toddlers and preschoolers in particular, many young children are front loaders. What this means is that they might eat more at the beginning of the day and eat less and less as the day goes on. So if your child eats a really big breakfast and a pretty decent lunch and they barely touch their dinner, that might just be their pattern of eating right now. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's a problem. So adjusting your expectations at dinner can actually take a lot of pressure off of everyone. That what is the goal here? Is the goal that they sit at the table and they participate? Maybe they only eat what they really want to eat and not anything else. Or is the goal that they finish their plate? And in doing that, they're not sitting at the table, they're running around, or you're feeding them while they're doing something else. Those are different goals. And so it's not that we can't work on both, but we have to have it in our head, what are we working for here? Or what are we like trying to help our child with right now? So in feeding therapy, when I'm supporting children with feeding, I do have an expectation that we're sitting at the table for eating. And typically, one big thing that helps with this is that everybody's sitting at the table. And this is a big piece that I ask parents about at home too. Because if you set your child up, sometimes I've seen that they have their own little table and their own little chair, and it might be facing the TV, and that's where they eat. And the dining room table is over there, but the parents maybe don't even eat at that. There's not a shared meal time. So there's not a lot of motivation for their child to stay in that chair if nobody's around them and nobody else is doing that either. So it's kind of like they're by themselves, or maybe they're kind of lonely, or maybe they're just bored. Um, and so sitting together and eating together, ideally, but even if it's just drinking some water or your coffee or tea or whatever with your child while they're eating is so beneficial because we are social learners. We learn through modeling, through copying and imitation. And so when I have feeding therapy sessions at the Airplane Spoon, we have everybody sitting at the table, me, the child, and a parent. It could be a second parent, it could be a nanny, it could be grandparents. And so there could be multiple people. So during our feeding therapies, sometimes I call it food school time, is we're all there. We're all there together. And so we're present, we're working on this. The fact that the parents are at the table and I'm at the table makes it a lot less likely that child gets down. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. Sometimes children do get down because they're overwhelmed. And so they're telling us something. They're telling us that I can't handle this right now. It's too much for me. I'm scared. I'm nervous. I'm disgusted. Maybe it's just something else that happened during the day and they had a hard time and they're overwhelmed by this. And putting pressure and expectation on learning for them right now is just too much. So we need to adjust and recognize that. Sometimes a child gets down and then I might have them sit with their parent while we're doing a little bit of like food cutting or mashing or prepping so that they're feeling more comfortable and then they might be able to go back to their chair. And that maybe doesn't happen in every session, and that's okay. It's our goal to work towards that. But I got to say that for all the children I see, we are getting into the chair and we're staying there for 30 to 40 minutes solid. And that's about it. I wouldn't push it too much. Our sessions are 60 minutes long. So the first 10 or 15 minutes are floor play. It could be toys. It could be big like swing or trampoline if that's what they need. And reading their bodies and seeing what is it that they need before we get to the chair. And then we're going to wash our hands. We have a whole routine. Then we go to the table. And something that really helps when I'm doing food school or food therapy is that we go to the table and then we talk about what we're going to do today. And then we get down right away because I'm going to say, what vegetable do you want? And we have like beets or potatoes. And then what fruit do you want? And we have kiwi or pear. Okay, let's go get them. So then we get down, we talk about what we're going to do today. We're going to do our fruit, we're going to do our vegetables. What did you bring? And the family has their food that they bring. And then we decide, we get down, we go get them, we wash our hands, we bring them to the table, we're ready. So when I have a child get down, and if a child gets down on their own because they're showing a little bit of overwhelm, I will give them a task. If they get down, I say, oh, can you go get me a spoon? And they know how to get those spoons. Or I say, oh, can you pass me a napkin? If they can get a napkin. Or I say, can you bring me a toy food? I have a toy kitchen. I have toy food. Now there's a purpose for their getting down. And I'm trying to get them to come back without asking them, come back, don't go. I'm giving them a purpose to try to fill, okay, your body got down, but I can get you back because you're going to be a helper right now. And a lot of times children want to be helpers. And I can make it really big and exciting. If I drop something, I'm like, oh, can you help me pick it up? I can't get it. Help me. And then they'll pick it up and I think it's really funny. Or if they get down, I'll say like, okay, let's wash your hands again. You got to put lots of bubbles this time. And usually water can be very regulating. And so the washing hands can help. And then we just come back. And so it's not that it's something that just is always successful and works out well for every child. And if your child is struggling to sit at the table, it's almost never just a behavior. And it's almost never about something that you've done wrong. Most of the time, there's something underneath the surface: physical discomfort, sensory need, transition challenge, hunger timing issue. And once that's addressed, it can make the whole mealtime experience feel different. And your job isn't to just force your child to sit. Your job is to be a bit of a detective, to understand what your child needs to feel safe, comfortable, and regulated enough to be present at the table. But you don't have to figure this all out at once. Start with one thing. Maybe it's just checking the seating position. Is it foot support? Is it the height of the chair? Maybe it's adding movement before meals. Maybe it's putting one safe food on the plate every single night. Small, consistent changes can add up over time. So if you're feeling stuck or if mealtimes feel like a battle every single day, that's what I'm here for. On the Airplane Spoon podcast, you can share your questions about what you would like for me to address and to support with, and we'll talk through this together. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to the Airplane Spoon podcast. Remember, you're doing an amazing job supporting your child on their feeding journey. You've got this. Love, enjoy, and eat.